I remember it like it happened yesterday. The smell of my mother's cooking, the chatter, the clinking of glasses. And then, Arav, Uncle, you stir so poor. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I froze mid-step, my fork trembling in my hand. Everyone laughed. Nervous laughter, awkward chuckles. But his laugh? That cruel, sharp laugh. It cut deeper than I ever imagined. Excuse me? I managed my voice tight. He smirked, leaned back in his chair. You heard me. You really are poor. Look at your apartment, your car. It seems pathetic. My mother glanced at me, eyes wide, lips pressed together. I could see the sympathy there, but it didn't reach me, not even a little. Come on, Arav, she said softly, trying to salvage the moment. That step's not nice. Why not? He snapped, rolling his eyes. It's set's true. Uncle, be honest. Do you even have anything going for yourself? I felt my face heat, my heart thudding, everyone's eyes on me. I wanted to disappear. My chest tightened, my stomach churned. I laughed, but it was hollow. Arav, you don't understand. Understand what? He said, cutting me off. That you stir nothing? I looked at him, really looked at him. He was my blood, 19, bold, careless. But the venom in his words, it was sharp, deliberate. Later I went to my small apartment, closed the door, sat on my worn-out couch. The shadows of the night creeping in. I held my old wallet in my hand. It was empty, cracked, a reflection of everything he thought I was. Someday, I whispered. Someday he shall see. I replayed every second, every smirk, every chuckle, every glance, over and over. I imagined his laughter replaced by shock, humiliation, the kind of helplessness I'd felt. I thought about my mother, her disappointed eyes, the way she had tried to shield me without actually defending me. I realized then, this wasn't just about money, it was about respect, dignity, being seen. I traced the edges of my wallet, a symbol of what I had, or rather, what I lacked, but I refused to stay that man. You think I set nothing? I muttered, voice low. Fine, watch me. I pictured his college years, his friends, his arrogance. I would enter that world. Not as a visitor, not as a beggar, but as someone he couldn't ignore. The anger bubbled inside me, fierce and alive. Humiliation turned to fire. Fire turned to focus. I started planning, quietly, secretly, every day, every hour. I told myself I will rise. He will see. I remembered how small I felt that day, shrinking under his gaze, and I promised never again. Tomorrow I would start, and the next day, and the next. Arav thought he had won, thought he could break me with a joke, but the joke was on him. I smiled faintly, not a happy smile, a determined one. I shall show you, Aver. One day, I shall buy your college, and you shall know exactly how wrong you were. The silence of my apartment felt heavy, but in that silence something else grew, a quiet strength, a seed of power. I wasn't that man anymore, not the man who cowered, not the man who let his nephew laugh at him in front of the family. I was someone else, someone patient, someone calculated, someone who would never be humiliated like that again. And I would make sure Avers learned it the hard way. I stopped answering calls, family, friends, even my mother's. Abdul, are you coming to dinner? She asked one evening, her voice soft, hesitant. I can't, I said, and hung up before she could respond. Work became a blur. I went through motions like a machine, typing emails, answering calls, nodding in meetings. Nothing mattered. Every smile felt fake, every compliment hollow. During lunch, I would sit alone, watching people laugh, watching them live while I felt invisible. And then I heard it, his laugh. Arav's laugh. Sharp, mocking. Uncle, you're so poor. It echoed inside my skull like a broken record. I slammed my coffee cup one day, hard. The ceramic cracked. Are you okay? A colleague asked. Fine, I muttered, but I wasn't fine. Not even close. I started questioning everything. My choices, my life, my sacrifices. I thought about the nights I worked 2 jobs, the years I scrimped on myself so others could have a better life. I had stayed honest when cheating would have been easier, kind when cruelty would have been simpler, loyal when betrayal would have been profitable. And for what? Why is life so cruel? I whispered into the dark of my apartment. The walls offered no answers, only silence. Nights were the worst. Sleep refused me. Shadows of my small, dimly lit apartment swallowed me whole. I stared at the ceiling, tracing cracks, counting ceiling tiles. My mind replayed the gathering. His smirk, everyone else's laughter, my mother's look, pity not protection. I grabbed a notebook one night, blank pages, waiting. I wrote, I scribbled, tired of being invisible, tired of being mocked, tired of being nothing. Page after page, thoughts spilled out like blood, pain, shame, frustration, the humiliation, every detail of his words, every gesture, every glance. I wrote it down. I wanted to feel it, understand it, confront it. And slowly, I started noticing something else. A strange clarity, a sense of quiet planning, not revenge yet, not action, but a reckoning. I thought about him, about Araf, the boy who had no idea what it cost to live with integrity, who had no idea how fragile respect could be until it was shattered. I'll make him understand, I whispered. Not yet, not today, but someday. I revisited old memories, times I'd sacrificed for the family, times I'd chosen to endure rather than fight. They no longer felt noble, they felt wasted. But now, maybe they were seeds, seeds I could grow into something stronger. I stopped looking at my failures with shame. I began analyzing them. Every missed opportunity, every denied shortcut, every selfless act that didn't yield recognition. These were lessons, these were tools. I drew a timeline in my notebook, scribbled thoughts, scenarios, ideas that floated like whispers in my head. A blueprint. I didn't know yet what it would become, but the act of writing, of planning quietly, made me feel alive. I laughed one evening, quietly, to myself, not a full happy laugh. Not yet, but a dangerous calculating laugh. The kind of laugh that comes when you start realizing power is not about money or status or applause. It's about patience. Strategy, knowing the world underestimates you, and using that. Sometimes I would close the notebook, stare out the window at the city lights, and imagine my life differently. Richer, stronger, seen, respected, and somewhere in that imagination, Arev's face would appear, not laughing, not mocking, but surprised. Stumbling, bewildered. I put the notebook away, locked it in a drawer, secret, mine. I realized I had changed. The humiliation still throbbed, but now it had a shape, a direction, a quiet, simmering strength that didn't need acknowledgement yet. I whispered into the darkness, I will rise, but on my terms, and he will see, he will know. The spiral wasn't finished. I wasn't healed. Not yet, but I was no longer the man who had frozen in the living room that day. The notebook, the plans, the quiet plotting, it was becoming my new reality. My small apartment, once a prison, was now a laboratory, a place where failure turned into strategy, pain turned into focus, shame turned into fuel. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and for the first time in days, I felt a strange calm. Not relief, not joy, not victory, just readiness. Arev thought he had broken me. He thought he had won. He was wrong. The quiet spiral had begun, and it would lead me somewhere. He would regret ever laughing. I didn't expect to see Uncle Raj at the cafe. Abdul, he said, eyes narrowing, noticing my slouched posture and hollow stare. You look defeated. What's going on with you? I laughed, but it was brittle. Defeated? Yeah, you could say that. He raised an eyebrow. You Steph been through worse. Spill it. What spit's eating you? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to hide it. Another part needed to scream. Finally the words came. Raw, unfiltered. It's Steps Arav, I admitted, voice tight. He humiliated me, in front of everyone, my own family. Called me poor, laughed at me. Uncle Raj leaned back. Silence. Not the comforting silence, but the heavy kind that makes you squirm. Ah, he said finally. I see. I felt my chest tighten. You? You don't tell me to ignore it? Or forgive him? No, he said, voice calm, deliberate. Forgiveness doesn't always fix things. Ignoring him only lets him know you can be pushed around. The only revenge worth taking is the one that leaves them thinking they never underestimated you. The words hit me like a lightning bolt. My heartbeat spiked. My mind raced. You mean, I whispered, I can make him regret underestimating me? Yes, he said. Not with shouting, not with threats, with strategy, with patience, with precision, make him see you were never what he thought. And by the time he realizes it, it sits too late. I nodded slowly. My fingers drummed the table. My chest felt tight with anticipation. For weeks, I had been stuck in that spiral, lost, humiliated, invisible. But this was a path forward. What do I do first? I asked, eager. Observe, Uncle Raj said. Learn, know his habits, his dreams, his weaknesses. Then wait. Timing is everything. I left the cafe that afternoon with a fire in my chest. The air felt sharper, my steps quicker. I went home, sat at my small desk, opened my laptop. Ariv's life was online. Social media, posts, interviews, college profiles. I dug every photo, every comment, every brag, every careless detail. It was all there. He was proud, arrogant, confident that life had handed him everything on a silver platter. Lucky boy, I muttered. You don't even know how fragile this world is. I made lists. His college schedule, his favorite hangouts, his social circle, every friend, every rival, every insecurity. I documented it all. Each piece a potential lever, a thread I could pull when the time was right. I remembered Uncle Raj's words: precision, strategy, patience, not revenge born of anger alone, but of cunning. I paused, stared at the screen. My heart thudded. I felt alive, really alive, for the first time in weeks. The humiliation had been a spark, and now, it was a flame. I called my mother that night. She sounded tired, concerned. Abdul, you sound different, she said. Maybe, I said, voice low, controlled. I just needed some time to think. About what? About respect, I replied, and I didn't tell her what kind. Not yet. The next few days, I became a ghost again. But this time, not defeated. I watched, I learned, I mapped. Arav posted videos of his campus life, bragged about projects, boasted about his grades. I noted it all. His weaknesses weren't obvious. He was careful, but everyone has them. And I was patient. One evening, my phone buzzed. A message from Arav. Hey uncle, you coming to the party this weekend? I stared at it, smirked. A long pause, then I typed slowly. Maybe? The single word was enough. Ambiguity. Control, power. I realized then that revenge wasn't about confrontation. It was about presence. About knowing more than they know. About making them doubt themselves before I even made a move. I sat back, closed my eyes, felt the tension in my shoulders loosen. I wasn't angry in the weak way anymore. I was focused, calculated, ready. You shall see, Arav, I whispered into the dark of my apartment. You shall see exactly what happens when you underestimate someone like me. The spark had become a plan. The humiliation, fuel, the spiral turned into direction. I looked at my notebook, opened it, wrote in bold letters at the top of a fresh page. Everything else would follow. Every insult, every laugh, every smirk, it would all come back to me refined, me, stronger, smarter, invisible no longer. I thought of Uncle Raj, his calm knowing eyes, his words that had set fire to something I thought was dead inside me. The only revenge worth taking is the one they never see coming. I repeated aloud, tasting it. It wasn't just advice anymore. It was my life's new direction. I checked Arif's profile again. His smile, his arrogance, his carelessness. I felt powerful. I felt alive. And for the first time in weeks, I slept that night with a plan. Not dreams, not fantasies, but a calculated plan. Arm had laughed at me, mocked me, belittled me. Tomorrow I would begin quietly. But one day he would look at me and realize he had never truly known me. And when that day came, he would regret underestimating me. I called Nisha late that night. Her ringtone was sharp, familiar. Abdul. It's sups late, she said, voice cautious. I need to talk, I whispered. Not casual, not small talk. Urgent, secretive, its steps personal. There was silence. Then go on. I told her everything. The gathering, Arav, the laugh, the words, every detail. My voice cracked once. twice, but I kept going. I wanted her to understand, not to pity me but to see the fire underneath. Nisha was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "And what do you want to do?" I swallowed. "I can instead just scold him. I can instead just lecture him. That would instead make him feel it. He needs to know what he did. To feel it. In a way that leaves him stunned." "Stunned?" she echoed, cautious. "Yes," I said, voice low, controlled. "He seems arrogant, untouchable in his mind. So I felt hit where it hurts, silently." There was another pause. I could hear her breathing. "Abdul, you supper serious?" "I sep and deadly serious," I said. "I want to buy his college." The line went quiet. "What?" "You heard me," I said. "Not to show off. Not for prestige. To control the environment where he feels invincible. To quietly tip the scales. To make him realize exactly what underestimating someone like me costs." Nisha didn't laugh. Didn't scold me. She said, "If anyone can do it, you can. But this has to be precise. Silent. Surgical." "I know," I whispered, relief coursing through me. Finally someone understood the kind of revenge I craved. Not loud, not petty, but poetic. Perfect. The next day, I started small. Research, meetings, calls, numbers, figures, contracts, every detail mattered. Arav thought he was untouchable. That arrogance would be his undoing, and I would be patient. "Are you sure about this?" Nisha asked again over lunch one afternoon. "I'm sure," I said. "Every insult, every laugh, every smirk, it all leads here. This is the plan. Step 1. She nodded slowly. "You need to stay focused. Don't let emotion cloud judgment." "I won't," I said, but inside I felt a thrill I hadn't in months. The humiliation was still there, simmering, but now it had shape, form, purpose. Each evening I balanced work, research, and plotting. My apartment became a war room. Laptop, notes, timelines, Arv's habits, college details, all carefully documented. Every step calculated, every scenario considered. I smiled one night, alone, reading a post from Arav, top of the class, already making my mark. His arrogance screamed off the screen. "Not for long," I muttered. "Quiet, dangerous." My fingers tapped the table, drumming the rhythm of a plan coming to life. I met with Nisha again in a quiet cafe where no one could see our faces. "So legally we can structure it," she said, voice low, precise. "He won't know until it sits too late. Control without confrontation. Influence without exposure." "That sep's what I want," I said, leaning forward, intensity in my eyes. "I want him to walk through those halls thinking he sep's untouchable. And all the while, I sep's the one holding the strings." She studied me, expression unreadable. "Gisp have changed, the old you wouldn't stead have dared. The new you, this is dangerous, but effective." I let that sink in. Dangerous, effective. Yes, that was me now. Not weak, not humiliated, not invisible. Power was intoxicating, and it was quiet. Silent, satisfying. The first step in revenge wasn't confrontation. It was preparation, research, patience, strategy. I became meticulous. Every call, every email, every decision, calculated. Each day the quiet power grew. I felt it in my bones. My chest tightened, not from anxiety, but anticipation. I imagined Arav walking into the college one day, confident, arrogant, thinking everything was his. And then, slowly, subtly, he would realize things had shifted, not with shouts, not with drama, but with invisible control. "You think too far ahead," Nisha said during one meeting. "Not far enough," I whispered, almost to myself. My eyes flicked to the window. City lights outside, endless possibilities. Every detail counts. Every plan matters. Every insult will be repaid. Perfectly, quietly, permanently. She smiled faintly. I sought help. "But, are you ready for what comes next?" I looked at her, eyes steady. I steady waited too long. I steady ready, more than ready. This is my time. That night, I sat at my desk, notebook open, laptop humming, city outside my window. I reviewed every list, every plan, every small advantage I had. The fire inside me burned hotter than ever. Humiliation had been transformed. Anger had been sharpened. Power had taken root. I whispered into the dark apartment. Step 1 in motion, and Arav, you shall never see it coming. The quiet smile I gave myself wasn't happiness. Not yet. It was control, precision, satisfaction. I wasn't the man who froze at the family gathering anymore. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't weak. I was patience. I was strategy. I was inevitability. And one day, Arav would learn what it truly means to underestimate someone. The seeds of poetic justice were planted, and soon, they would grow. I never imagined buying a college could feel like a battlefield. The first meeting with the board members was brutal. Suits, polished shoes, sharp eyes. They didn't know me, and they didn't care. Mr. Wahab, you realize this is instead a small investment, one of them said, flipping through pages. The finances, the infrastructure, the staff, this is instead a charity. I understand, I said, voice steady. I step in here because I believe in the potential of this institution, and I also happen to have the means to make it thrive. A murmur ran around the room, curious, skeptical. Another board member leaned forward. Do you have prior experience in education management? I smiled faintly. No, but I have experience in making decisions that matter, experience in turning potential into results, and most importantly, experience in being underestimated. They blinked, not expecting that. Negotiations dragged on for hours. Terms, contracts, legal clauses. I barely understood but had Nisha on speed dial for. Every page I signed felt like a heartbeat in a war only I knew I was fighting. Are you sure about these terms, Abdul? Nisha whispered during one late-night call. It's steps risky, you could be exposed. I said, sure, I said. Risk is part of the game. He doesn't see it coming. That Sid's the point. Late nights blurred into early mornings. Coffee cups, tired eyes, legal documents stacked like towers. I imagined Arav somewhere laughing at the world, thinking he was untouchable, and the thought of him realizing he wasn't sent a thrill through me. One day, a board member asked me directly, "Why are you so invested? No one from your family has any ties here." I leaned back, choosing my words carefully, because sometimes the world underestimates people who quietly prepare, and when they do, the outcome is unforgettable. They didn't laugh, they didn't argue, just a long, tense silence. Signing the final contract was surreal. The pen in my hand felt heavier than any weight I'd carried before. Each stroke was deliberate, each signature a small victory. I could almost hear Aravsup's laugh echoing in my mind, the same laugh that had haunted me for weeks, months. Uncle, you stir so poor. And now? He had no idea. I sat back in the chair after the last signature, heart pounding, hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but anticipation, triumph, poetic justice in its purest, quiet form. Nisha called the next morning. It's SEP's official, the college is yours. No one knows yet. Not Arav, not anyone. I know, I said, a low, dangerous smile curling my lips. He'll think SEP's untouchable, until the first semester begins. I pictured him walking through the campus, confident, arrogant, thinking he controlled everything. Laughing with his friends, bragging about grades, projects, his future. And behind the scenes, I would be the one controlling every detail, hiring decisions, budget allocations, curriculum changes, policies. I could shape the very environment where he thought he ruled, and he wouldn't see a thing until it was too late. The first week after acquisition was nerve-wracking. Emails, legal filings, financial audits. I had to be careful. Invisible, subtle, powerful without showing power. Nisha Sep's voice was calm over the phone. You Sept are doing this perfectly. Quiet. Precise. Just how I'll never expect. Good, I said. Because if he senses me, it won't have the same effect. It has to be perfect. Every night, I went over lists, faculty, student council, air of schedule, his favorite professors. Every tiny detail could become leverage. Every routine, every habit, a potential tool. I thought about my mother, how she had watched that day at the family gathering, the pity in her eyes. Now, I was reclaiming dignity, pride, not for her, not for anyone else. For me. Abdul, Nisha said quietly. One evening, you said turning humiliation into power. quietly but utterly. This is impressive. I smirked. Impressive? No, necessary. Justice, Nisha. Perfect. Quiet justice. He won't see it coming. I imagined the day he discovered the truth. If ever he did, the shock, the disbelief, the flush of shame, that day would be sweeter than any reward. I walked the campus after finalizing everything. Empty halls, chairs stacked, whiteboards bare. I could almost hear his voice echoing, laughing carelessly, and I imagined the reversal, him realizing that everything he thought was untouchable was under my control. I whispered to myself, low, fierce, every laugh, every insult, every glance of pity, it all ends here, and will never forget it. The thrill of power coursed through me. Not money, not prestige, not recognition. This was dignity, pride, poetic justice served silently, invisibly, yet perfectly. I returned home late that night. The city lights gleamed outside my window. I poured a glass of whiskey, took a sip, and let myself smile. A quiet, dangerous smile. This wasn't over. Not yet, but the first strike had been made. The board members, the contracts, the legal hurdles. They had all bowed to one thing, my patience, my planning, my silent wrath. Arav had no idea, and that made it perfect. I whispered again, almost to myself. Step 1, complete. And the game has only just begun. The pens, the contracts, the late nights, they weren't just transactions, they were statements, proof that I wasn't weak, proof that underestimation came at a cost. I sank into my chair, exhausted but alive. The spark that had been lit months ago had grown into a fire, and soon, Arav would feel it. Not with anger, not with confrontation, with inevitability, with quiet, perfect justice. I closed my eyes, imagining the day he would walk into his college, confident, smug, and realize that the one who had been mocked, humiliated, underestimated, was now untouchable. The thrill, the anticipation, the quiet power, it was intoxicating. And I was ready for everything that came next. Once the acquisition was complete, I became a ghost. Not invisible in the sense of absence, but invisible in control. Every decision I made shaped Arev's world, and he had no idea. I started small, curriculum updates, policies, faculty assignments, dorm renovations, scholarships. Each change seemed ordinary, but each one carried intention, a puzzle where I held all the pieces, and he had none. Why is this class schedule so rigid? Arav complained one afternoon to a friend, voice loud enough to carry across the quad. I don't know, his friend said, shrugging. It steps just administration stuff. Administration stuff. Exactly. And the hand guiding it was mine. I smiled quietly from my apartment, sipping tea, my pulse quickened at the thought. Silent, precise, dominant. Nisha called that night. You're enjoying this too much, she said, teasing. I sup not enjoying it, I said, voice low. I sup savoring it. Every complaint, every frustration, it sups proof that he underestimated me. That arrogance has a cost. She laughed softly. Careful. Don't let it consume you. I won't, I said, but I didn't tell her how intoxicating it felt. The power of being everywhere without anyone knowing, of moving pieces on a board while the king believed he controlled the game. I observed him through reports, emails forwarded by staff, conversations picked up by Nisha's discreet queries, every irritated sigh, every look of confusion, every friend complaining about new policies, all orchestrated, all intentional. One evening, I called the dorm manager. Make sure Avarispet's schedule shifts slightly, I said. Morning classes first. Evening labs last. Include mandatory workshops he dislikes. Of course, sir, he replied, unaware of the invisible motive behind the request. I hung up and leaned back. My apartment was quiet. Shadows draped across the walls. And I felt it, the thrill of silent control. It wasn't cruelty, not in the traditional sense. Every challenge was calibrated, every obstacle designed to teach, to subtly remind him that underestimating someone, me, had consequences. Days later, I overheard Arav arguing with a professor over grading policies. This isn't set fair, he yelled. I done all the work. And now, this? The professor looked flustered. I following the new guidelines. Arav, It's the system now. Ah, the system. My system. I closed my eyes, letting a faint smile curl my lips. The universe was responding. Slowly, quietly, perfectly. Even the scholarships were part of it. Carefully selected students received support that would challenge him, bright, competitive peers who would push him, force him to adapt, to grow, or falter. One afternoon, I watched him from a distance as he stomped across the quad, muttering about dorm renovations and pointless bureaucracy. Everything Seps changed, he said to a friend. Frustrated, I don't get why these rules exist. It's like someone Seps messing with me. Messing with you? The friend asked. Yeah, he said. I don't know who, but something feels off. Exactly. That off feeling, the subtle anxiety, the frustration without knowing why, that was the point. He was being guided, challenged, controlled by someone he would never suspect. I called Nisha later. He kept starting to notice. I whispered. Satisfaction laced my words. The hints, the frustration, perfect. Good, she said. But remember precision. Invisible, done stet, let him connect the dots. I won't, I said. My mind raced through every update I had made, every small disruption, every adjustment to policies, curriculum, or dorm life, all silent, all unseen. I imagined the day he would finally realize, not now, not tomorrow, but eventually. The shock, the disbelief, the flush of humility. The thrill of that eventual revelation was almost unbearable. I had waited months for the first strike, now the ongoing orchestration, the quiet, relentless pressure was even more satisfying. I reviewed faculty reports that night. Notes on student performance, scheduling conflicts, project submissions, every line was a tool, every email a potential lever, and I held them all. One professor called me, unaware I was the owner now. Sir Arav is struggling with the new curriculum, she said. He keeps complaining. Encourage him, I said calmly. Push him, he said learn to adapt. I hung up. The shadows of the apartment felt alive. The city lights outside my window flickered, and I realized this was power in its purest form. Quiet, omnipresent, undeniable. I wasn't a tyrant. I wasn't cruel. I was precise. Calculated, patient. The satisfaction came from invisibility, the knowledge that he would never suspect the extent of control I wielded. Every frustration, every complaint, every bewildered glance in his direction, I savored it. Every sigh of exasperation was a heartbeat in my silent war. Even my mother called one evening. Abdul, you sound different, she said. Concern, worry, admiration tangled in her tone. I said learned patience, I said softly, and how to wield it. She didn't push further. She couldn't know. Not yet. I leaned back, letting the quiet dominate the room. Shadows clung to the corners. My hands rested on the desk, relaxed, steady. I had waited too long to feel powerless. Now I was everywhere, unseen but absolute. Arev's laughter at my expense echoed faintly in my mind. I let it linger, and then replaced it with the sound of my own quiet satisfaction. The mask of power I wore wasn't visible. He couldn't see it, but he felt it. In every policy change, every schedule shift, every subtle challenge thrown his way. And one day, he would understand. Not immediately, not with confrontation, but inevitably, that day, when realization dawned, would be the culmination of months of patience, planning, and silent dominance. I smiled faintly, sipping tea. Shadows danced on the walls. The thrill of being unseen yet omnipresent washed over me. This wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. This was perfection, poetry and control. And I was its author. I watched him carefully. From afar, silent, invisible. Ornov started noticing things. Small things at first. Scholarships he'd assumed were his suddenly marked ineligible. Lab schedules clashing with his preferred classes. Professors who never seemed to care before now scrutinizing every assignment, every word, every late submission. I let him fume. Let him twist in confusion. Why now? He muttered one afternoon to a friend. Everything sets wrong, rules changed overnight. Professors are different. It sets like someone sets watching me. His friend laughed nervously. Maybe you stir overthinking it. Overthinking? Arav Sep's voice rose. I don't think so. Something Sep's off. Something Seps changed, and I don't stet know what or why. I leaned back in my chair at home, watching reports trickle in from Nisha. Every complaint logged, every sign of frustration noted. My chest tightened, not with anxiety, but anticipation. The first cracks in his armor. Arav came home that evening, pacing my mother's living room. "Mom," he barked, agitated, hands gripping the back of a chair. "I don't stet get it. Everything at college it stets all wrong. I can stet qualify for scholarships I earned. Labs are being rescheduled without notice, and professors they stet watching me." My mother looked concerned. "Arav, maybe it's just administrative changes? Colleges do that sometimes." "Administrative changes." His voice cracked. "This feels deliberate, like someone setting me up. Everything I thought I had, it's slipping away." I stayed silent in the background, hidden in the shadows of my own thoughts, watching, savoring. "Abdul?" my mother asked, glancing at me. "Have you noticed anything?" I shook my head casually. "Not really. Maybe it's just a phase. Arav, you know how colleges are." He glared at me, confusion mixing with anger. You don't get it. You never had to fight for anything. Everything supposed to be handed to me. And now," he stopped, trembling slightly. "I can even navigate it." The tension in the room was thick. My mother tried to soothe him. "Sweetheart, maybe you need to step back. Think rationally, there's always a solution." He slammed his fist lightly on the armrest. "Step back? Step back?" "Mom, I'm losing control. I don't understand why all this is happening." I let the silence stretch, let the frustration fester. Every complaint he filed, every confused glance he threw towards staff, every whispered curse under his breath. Perfect. That night, I reviewed the day's updates on the college dashboard, labs reassigned, projects shuffled, dorm allocations subtly altered. Nothing obvious to outsiders, everything surgical, calculated. The cracks were forming. Nisha called quietly. "He noticing. Isn't he?" "Yes," I whispered, almost reverently, and its steps intoxicating, the arrogance, the entitlement, cracking, slowly but surely. "Be careful," she warned. "This is fragile. Don't push too hard too fast." "I once it," I said. "It has to be gradual, subtle, invisible, but he will feel it. And when he realizes the truth, he'll never forget it." Arav was spiraling. Reports from professors reached me, increased anxiety, missed deadlines, small confrontations with peers. He didn't know it, but every mistake was orchestrated. Every challenge was intentional. He called my mother later that week, voice low, almost desperate. "Mom, I think someone I don't know, watching my every move, or controlling things. It like the college itself is against me." My mother sighed, worried. "Anav, don't jump to conclusions. Colleges can be chaotic. Maybe you just stressed." "Stressed?" He laughed bitterly. "I never been this stressed. Everything I thought I could rely on, it's gone. And no one explains why." I stayed quiet, letting him unravel. The realization that control was slipping from his hands and that someone else held it was more satisfying than I could describe. Years of humiliation, of being underestimated, of watching him believe he was untouchable, all condensed into these moments. Even in my mother's living room, I felt a thrill at his confusion. Every furrowed brow, every clenched jaw, every small desperate glance toward me, it was fuel. I whispered to myself, almost a mantra, underestimation has consequences. Every arrogance has its price. Nisha Sep's latest report arrived just then. He isolating, less social, focused on figuring out what wrong. He suspects a pattern, but he can see the hand guiding it. "You done this perfectly." I smiled faintly, shadows dancing across the walls of my apartment. Perfectly. Yes. Silent, invisible, dominant. Every decision, every subtle alteration, a thread in a web only I controlled. I imagined the day he would finally realize it. Not now, not tomorrow, but inevitably. That shock, that flush of disbelief. The knowledge that he had been dancing to my tune all along. The room felt alive with anticipation. I could almost hear his frustration echoing through the halls of the college, and I reveled in it. This wasn't cruelty. Not in the traditional sense, This was justice. Precise, patient, invisible. I whispered once more, low and dangerous, the cracks appear, and soon the collapse will follow. Arav didn't know it yet, but he would. And when he did, the taste of his realization would be sweeter than any revenge I had ever imagined. I sat back, letting the quiet satisfaction wash over me, watching, waiting, invisible, yet omnipresent. The first fractures in his arrogance had formed, and I knew the rest would follow. It happened faster than I expected. One evening, Arav barged into my apartment, face red, eyes wild. His backpack was slung carelessly, papers spilling. "Uncle," he shouted, voice shaking. I know you did this." I didn't flinch, didn't react, just sat, calm, hands folded on the table. You bought the college?" His words were disbelief, anger and confusion tangled together. All this, these policies, the rules, the professors watching me, it was you? I nodded slowly. You, he stumbled over his words, voice cracking. You start petty? This is petty. You start humiliating me on purpose. Is it petty to hold someone accountable for their arrogance? I asked softly. My voice was low, calm, but every word carried the weight of years of being underestimated. He slammed a fist on the table, shaking the papers. Accountable? You call this revenge? You went behind my back, controlled everything. Everything. Everything you thought was untouchable. I said, leaning forward slightly. Every insult, every careless word, every laugh at my expense. It all has consequences, Arav. He blinked, confusion turning to anger. Then something else. Guilt. Recognition. You've been controlling me? He whispered, voice trembling. All this time, and I didn't see it. No, I said calm, letting the silence stretch. You didn't see it because you never thought you should. You assumed the world owed you respect. You assumed I would always be beneath you. That assumption was your mistake. He sank into the couch, hands over his face. I didn't no. I was wrong. Yes, I said softly, watching him unravel. You were, and now you understand. Arav's shoulders shook. I laughed at you, uncle, in front of everyone. I humiliated you. His voice cracked, shame surfacing for the first time. I didn't respond. I let him feel it. The weight of his arrogance mirrored back at him. Every snicker, every smirk, every careless word he threw at me now returned. He looked up, tears glinting in his eyes. I don't know what to say. Sorry. I didn't think. I leaned back, watching, heart steady. It's steps not about your words anymore. It's steps about understanding that every action has a consequence. You believed power and entitlement made you untouchable. You were wrong, and now, you feel it. He buried his face in his hands again. I never felt like this. Helpless, confused, exposed. Good. That helplessness, that recognition of being wrong, it was more satisfying than any confrontation, any argument. Quiet, undeniable justice. I whispered, almost to myself, the tables have turned. He peeked through his fingers, voice barely audible. All this you didn't have to. I mean, it sets cruel. Cruel? I asked softly. I gave you exactly what you earned. Every laugh you threw at me. Every insult. Every careless judgment. I simply held up a mirror. I can believe it, he said, shaking his head. I thought I was untouchable. You thought wrong, I said. The words were calm, but the satisfaction behind them was sharp. And now, humility is the only thing you can hold on to. He looked at me finally, eyes wide, voice trembling. I never realized the pain I caused. How much I hurt you. I let the pause linger. Let him dwell in it. Let him truly feel what he had done, what he had thought he could get away with. My arrogance, my stupidity, he muttered, voice low. I didn't see it. I laughed. I mocked. And now I see. I'm small. I feel small. Yes, I said quietly, letting the weight of his words settle between us. And that smallness, that recognition, is your lesson. You will carry it. That is enough. He sat there, defeated, humbled, the fire of his entitlement extinguished. And for the first time I saw him, not as my spoiled, mocking nephew, but as someone learning the cost of underestimation. I, I'm sorry, he whispered again. I never should have mocked you, humiliated you. I, I get it now. I nodded. Good. Understand it fully. Let it sink in. Let it change you. He leaned back, exhausted, and for a long moment the room was silent. His regret was palpable, tangible, heavy, and I allowed myself a faint smile, quiet, but victorious. The echo of his laughter at my expense was gone, replaced now by reflection, humility, understanding. I whispered to myself, a soft, dangerous murmur, justice, silent, patient, perfect. He finally looked up at me, eyes red, voice low. I never thought someone would fight back like this. So quietly, so completely. That, I said softly, is the difference between being underestimated and being unstoppable. He didn't argue, he couldn't, and I didn't need him to. His silence, his shame, his recognition, that was the closure I had waited for years to feel. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole. Not because I had money, or power, or control, but because I had turned humiliation into justice, pain into teaching, arrogance into awareness. And Arav, my nephew, who had once laughed at me, he finally understood. I let him sit there, humbled, regret etched into every line of his face, and I realized the lesson was complete. I watched him adjust, slowly, tentatively. Arav wasn't the same arrogant boy who had laughed at me months ago. He moved differently, spoke differently, paused before speaking, as if weighing every word, as if understanding that words carry weight, the same weight he had once ignored. One morning, he approached a professor, voice steady, eyes honest. Sir, I want to apologize for misunderstanding your guidance earlier. I didn't set to appreciate your effort, and I realize now that I was wrong. The professor blinked, startled. Of that seps unexpected. I know, he said softly. I have to take responsibility. I watched from the shadows, leaning against the doorway of the office. No one knew I was here. No one could see the satisfaction flicker across my face. Not triumph, not malice, just quiet validation. He turned to a classmate next. I'm sorry for being dismissive before. I was instead considerate. I misjudged you. The classmate nodded, surprised, eyes wide. I appreciate that, Arav. I let it sink in. Every apology, every recognition of his own arrogance, it was mine to witness. The tables had turned completely. Later, he came to me, hesitating at the doorway. Uncle, I don't know how to say this. I'm sorry. For everything. For laughing at you. For thinking you were beneath me. I see now. I see how wrong I was. I didn't smile too widely, didn't gloat. I simply nodded, voice calm. I accept your apology, I said softly. But remember, this isn't set just about words. It sets about understanding. It sets about humility. It sets about respect. He swallowed hard. I understand. I do. And thank you, not just for letting me learn, but for showing me the consequences of my actions. I leaned back, letting the weight of those words settle in the room. This wasn't revenge as others know it. Loud, dramatic, humiliating. This was quiet, precise, perfectly timed. A karmic shift executed without spectacle, without cruelty. Over the next weeks, Arav's change became visible. He helped peers without expectation, listened without interrupting, admitted mistakes without hesitation. He apologized to staff he had once mocked, to classmates he had dismissed, to professors he had taken for granted. One afternoon, he approached a janitor in the hallway, hesitating, voice low. I am sorry for being rude earlier. I didn't set to appreciate the effort you put into keeping the campus running smoothly. Thank you. The janitor blinked, surprised, then smiled faintly. That's very kind of you, young man. I watched from a distance, my pulse steady, poetic justice. His reckoning wasn't loud, but it was complete. He came home that evening, dropping his bag by the door. Mom, Uncle, I've been reflecting. I see now how much I've taken for granted, how much I've underestimated people, underestimated life. I want to do better. My mother looked at me, eyebrows raised. I simply nodded once, faintly, quiet satisfaction. Later, Av approached me privately. I never thought I sup feel this way. Humility, it seems strange. But, it feels right. And I want to thank you for showing me. For everything. Good, I said softly, letting the simplicity of the word carry weight. That sip's all I wanted. Not revenge for the sake of cruelty, but justice for the lessons you needed to learn. He nodded, swallowing hard. I I see it now. Every insult I threw, every careless word, the consequences were always there. I just didn't see them. You see them now, I said quietly, and that sip's what matters. I watched him leave my office that evening. His steps were measured, deliberate. He wasn't defeated, he was changed. Humble, aware, accountable. I didn't need applause, acknowledgement, or validation. The shift was internal, invisible to the world. But I had witnessed it, and that was enough. I sat back, letting the quiet settle in the room. Months of careful orchestration, silent maneuvering, and patient planning had culminated in this moment. No spectacle, no humiliation, just justice. Perfectly measured, perfectly timed. The laughter he once threw at me, it had returned, but now filtered through understanding, not arrogance, not entitlement. I whispered softly to myself, almost a mantra, silent, patient, precise, justice achieved. I had reclaimed my dignity, not by breaking him, not by shaming him, but by orchestrating a lesson he would never forget. And as the sun set outside my window, casting shadows across the walls, I realized something profound. Revenge isn't about anger. It isn't about cruelty. It's about balance, about reclaiming what was lost, teaching what needed to be learned, and standing unbroken at the end. Arav had learned humility. I had reclaimed my peace. The karmic cycle was complete. Quiet, perfect, satisfying. I finally let myself exhale. Months of tension, planning, patience, it all settled into quiet satisfaction. The humiliation that once gnawed at me, that made me question my worth, that haunted my nights, gone, replaced not by triumph, not by gloating, but by something deeper. Pride, quiet, undeniable. I walked through the empty halls of the college one morning, watching students move about. The place that had once been a battlefield for my silent war now felt serene, alive, balanced, and somewhere in that balance, I felt free. I whispered to myself, almost in disbelief. I did this, not for money, not for revenge, but to reclaim myself. Later I called my mother. Her voice, warm and tentative, came through the line. Abdul, you stir, different. I see it. You stir, lighter, happier. It stips, nice to hear. I chuckled softly. I am, Mom. For the first time in years I feel whole. Did you ever think you would get here? After everything? I did, I said, voice steady. But not like this, not so quietly, not without losing myself to anger or bitterness. I learned, lessons don't have to come with fire. They can come with patience, calculation, with integrity. She paused. Then softly, I'm proud of you. Truly. I let her words settle. No need to argue, no need to explain. Finally, peace. That evening, I sat at my desk looking at my old journal, the same one where I'd scribbled down every humiliation, every pang of anger, every desire for revenge. I smiled faintly. Those pages no longer burned me with pain. They reminded me instead of strength, of resilience, of the person I had been underestimated for, and who had risen above it. I murmured softly, almost to the room itself. The scars are still here, they always will be, but they don't define me. They remind me of the power I always had, even when I doubted it. I picked up my phone and texted Arav. Just a simple message, I hope you're learning. Truly learning. Minutes later his reply came, I am, thank you. No pride in my voice. No gloating, just acknowledgement. Justice had been served, but not as punishment, as teaching, as reflection. I leaned back in my chair, letting the quiet fill the space around me. I thought about the nights I had spent obsessing, the plans I had executed with precision, the silent moves behind the scenes. Every step had been calculated, every choice deliberate, but now, I didn't need them anymore. The lesson was complete. I whispered to myself. I rose, not through rage, not through cruelty, but through patience, through silence, through understanding my own worth. Later that week, my mother invited me for tea. Arav sat across from us, quieter, humbler. He didn't bring up the past. He didn't argue. He simply existed in the new dynamic. Different, changed. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt hope. Abdul, my mother said, smiling softly. It steps nice seeing you like this. At peace. I nodded. It's sup's been a long road, Mom, but I sup's finally here, and it's sup's enough. Arav cleared his throat. Uncle, I just want to say, I respect you, for everything, for showing me humility, for teaching me without breaking me. I smiled faintly, not because of the words but because of the acknowledgement of growth. He had learned. I had reclaimed myself. The sun was setting outside, casting long shadows across the room, warm light spilling into the space. I watched it silently, reflecting on the journey. All the planning, the silent maneuvering, the careful orchestration, it had not been about vengeance, it had been about reclaiming dignity, about proving to myself that I mattered, that I could rise above humiliation, that I could turn pain into strength. I whispered to myself. A soft, resolute murmur. I rose, and I will continue to rise. For the first time in years, I felt light, free, strong. The quiet kind of power that doesn't need recognition, that doesn't need applause, that simply exists, undeniable and unwavering. The past was still there. The scars, the memories, they were part of me, but they no longer controlled me. They reminded me of the strength I had found. I looked at Arav, then at my mother, then back at the window. The horizon glowed softly. Possibility, peace, a life reclaimed. I finally allowed myself to smile. Not a smirk, not a victory grin, just a calm, steady smile that came from knowing I had risen, quietly, fully, and without losing myself in the process. And in that quiet, I knew this was enough.